because if you put in new subjects and all that, still there's not much change. Learners are not critical thinkers. We don't encourage creativity in schools.
What is up, everybody? And hello from planet Earth. I'm your host, Philip. Most of you'll know me as Phil, and this is the Future Minds podcast. Simply the best podcast out there, covering all you need to know in EdTech, online learning, the digital economy, and what's being done around the world to shape the minds of the future. In today's episode, I'll be speaking with Thabiso Ramadiba. Thabiso is a South African entrepreneur and the co-founder of PS Connect and the PS Foundation. PS Connect is an EdTech platform that connects school students with institutions to secure post-school education funding and career opportunities. During his 10-year tenure of building PS Connect, alongside co-founder Nathan Dube, they founded PS Foundation in 2016 and have since shaped the foundation's vision, developing innovative strategies to address the lack of career development in impoverished schools across South Africa, and have been recognized as an outstanding career development program, assisting over 200,000 learners across South Africa to get access to post-school education, funding, and increase access to job opportunities within local communities. Born and raised in South Africa, Thabiso holds a BSc Honours in Business Information Technology from the University of Greenwich. In this episode, Thabiso and I discuss the origin of PS Connect and the PS Foundation, the challenges faced in today's education system, the need for equal access to quality education, and the future of education and employment in Africa, and a range of other topics. I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation with Thabiso, and I'm sure you will too. Without further ado, I bring you Thabiso Ramadiba. Thabiso, welcome. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you very much for having me.
Great. So, Thabiso, to start off, maybe you can just tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, and how you got here.
My name is Thabiso Ramadiba. I am one of the co-founders of PS Connect. So we run two entities. It's PS Connect and PS Foundation. PS Connect is an online system that connects learners to 250 tertiary institutions. It connects them to 1,700 careers, and it connects them to 200 funding institutions. So, and the reason why we've actually developed that and we saw the need is we've realized a lot of learners don't have access to such information and such opportunities, which we could relate to because we've never had access to that. So we created PS Connect. We started it in 2010. Then in 2016, we started the foundation, where we realized that our system is more accessible to kids from urban areas, and we wanted it to be accessible everywhere, even to the most rural areas. So that's the reason why we started the foundation, to give those tools accessible to those kids.
Incredible. So you started PS Connect in 2010. What led you up to starting the PS Connect group and then the PS Foundation? Obviously, it was something inspired by your own personal experiences. But prior to starting PS Connect, where were you? What did you do? And what led you to finally make that decision?
Yeah, I come from a technical background. I went to a technical high school. So in my head, I've had this idea of being an architecture, which I was actually extremely good in drawing. So all I knew, I needed to just do well in my drawing, pass matric, then I'll be an architecture. Reality hit me when I applied to VETS and UJ, and they did not accept my application because there are requirements which I couldn't meet. I didn't have the rights, math marks, and all that. And then I spoke to my partner, because at that time when I actually spoke to my partner, I studied civil. I went into TUT to study a bit of civil. I realized this is not necessarily what I wanted to do because in my head, I just wanted to draw buildings, design buildings and stuff like that. But I got then introduced to IT later on. I think this is maybe third year. Then I decided to drop out and take a course in IT. Then when IT then allowed me to actually still design. So now I'm not necessarily designing buildings, I'm designing softwares, which is the same, it's linked to the same skill that I had naturally. Then when I spoke to my partner about the path and the challenges I had, he also had the same thing. Then instead of just talking about it, we then decided, look, let's start a system that would actually address those challenges, and that's how we came about it.
So how do students get in touch with you?
Through different platforms. As I've mentioned, PS Connect is online. Most of our applications, students will go on the internet and access us there, which it's quite amazing. I mean, we've had milestone. I remember last year, one of our milestone was to help 100,000 learners, which we did. And that's the reason why even our foundation got an award for the Community Builder of the Year, BBQ award, because of that effort. But what was amazing, we thought it was going to be challenging for us to actually assist learners, because we've got a whole lot of them that they don't have internet access. And the whole lockdown COVID thing, made us approach things differently. And instead of waiting for the year to actually assist 100,000, I think we hit that by May already. We were assisting over 100,000. Just last month, we assisted 42,000 new learners just in a month. So this is why we believe that technology was the best way to approach this, but also make it accessible.
I mean, if I think about the need for South Africa to have a platform like yours, I couldn't think of a country that needs it more. It's obviously an African issue that we're tackling here, and that is bridging the gap between school and employment. Looking at the South African context, what are some of the challenges that we face in the current education system, that you think prevents students from having that opportunity to transition seamlessly from school into either tertiary education or from school into the work environment?
I think the biggest challenge, which because I'm in partnership with the Department of Education, Gauteng, and I keep on addressing this. Administration is the biggest challenge that cut across all boards, because we've got teachers that needs to assist, let's say, a classroom of 200 learners. And these 200 learners, each and every one of them have got different capabilities, they've got different interests, different passion, and all that. And when we speak to teachers, smart teachers are able to give us 20 careers that they know of. You can just imagine, and those are smart teachers. The others, they know your typical careers, be a doctor, be a lawyer, be an engineer and stuff like that. But we're looking at a pool of 1,700, and teachers are not able to administer that. And that's the reason why it is so difficult for learners to even think of transitioning. Obviously, there's a lot of factors that our foundation addresses. This could be lack of funding, which can be a great demotivator. some families, you've got child-headed homes. So there's a whole lot of factors that contribute in that. But the basis of everything, I think, is it starts at the administration level, where it does not allow learners to be exposed to such information, have access to such opportunities. And that's the reason why we've actually developed the two platforms, because PS Connect is online, but the foundation runs an offline system, because, I mean, if you go to rural areas, there's no internet. So we had to think of a way that how do they access the same platform but offline, and we've developed such a platform for them to access our system.
That's incredible. I mean, just to think that there are potentially 1,700 career paths out there for students, that's something that's not taught in school, and you raise a very interesting point that we go through school without necessarily knowing all the potential career paths that are out there for us. So what is the difference in the role that you play in the company and your partner? I believe it is two co-founders, yourself and your co-founder. Do you have joint responsibilities or split roles in the business?
My partner and I, Nathan, when you're studying something which obviously you don't have a manual of how to start this, because it was a big hurdle we needed to kind of climb. I mean, in 2010, when we went out into the market to try get a quotation of how much it will cost to develop this system, at that time the lowest we got was 2 million. Remember, we're fresh from varsity. When you speak 2 million, it sounds like it's impossible, But what I've liked traveling this journey with him is we have a similar vision, and that started. You start with one idea of this is what you want to address, but when you start going into your research and identify the problems in education, then you guys start thinking holistically of how you're actually going to solve this problem. And basically that's what we do on a daily basis. We've got a good team behind us, which obviously they do the nitty-gritties, programming and all that, but our sole focus is trying to think of solutions that are accessible, because that's very important for us. Then they actually have an impact in the kids' lives, and that's what we are doing on a daily basis.
Incredible. So do students come to you from school level as well as university level, or do you primarily focus at the end of school?
So our system are accessible from grade 8 all the way to grade 12, because in each grade there are different challenges that we need to address. Sometimes you speak to a grade 12 learner that wants to be an engineer. It's their passion, it's their dream, but when you look at their subjects, they don't have maths and science. It doesn't matter how much you pray, you hope, it's just not going to happen, So that's the reason why we address it in each and every grade. Then we have also school leavers that come to us. They're sitting at home. Some of them are working. They want to upgrade their courses. They want a certain career path, where we actually tailor a career path for them to say, if you take this path, you will still be able to achieve what you're looking for. But the whole goal for us is we want to develop a system that will take learners from literally primary level all the way into the job place. But we had to pace ourselves in the system we are developing, where we needed to start somewhere, and we identified high school as the place to start and grow into the other systems.
Okay, so If you look at the education system as a whole, you've obviously been able to look at it through the perspective of both a learner yourself as well as somebody that is trying to help learners to develop a career path. What would you change about the current education system if you could?
I always say I don't think there's anything wrong with the education system. I think we are looking at the question not in the right perspective, because every system has got an output. So the previous system that was set, it was set for a certain output. Immediately once you change the output and you then look at the system, it feels like the system is wrong. Where I believe that we need to look at the output and say, what kind of output do we want? Do we want to develop learners that are critical thinkers? Do we want to develop learners that are they've got entrepreneurship spirit? Exactly what do you want to develop? And once you know what you want to, what kind of an output you want, then you go and change the system. I see them introducing new subjects like entrepreneurship in schools. I see them introducing coding. But still, we're not looking at the outcome. Because if you put in new subjects and all that, still there's not much change. Learners are not critical thinkers. We don't encourage creativity in schools. So it doesn't matter which modules you bring, you're just going to continue bringing out the same learners with extra subjects. That's all. So I feel that let's change the mindset based on the output and then go and bring in the subject relating to that.
That's a really interesting perspective. So how hands-on are you in the placement of learners from, a school to a potential career path with an employer? Is this something that you personally oversee, or has the business grown to such an extent that you're no longer personally involved with that?
No, we are personally involved on a high level because, as I said, the number of learners that come through, they just too much for us to handle, and we also have to handle the business aspect of keeping the ship afloat, and especially in this COVID, but we are involved in such a way that we always measure the impact. We've introduced a new USSD that learners has been accessing our system through that. And for us as the visionaries, we always come back to the team and see which learners are experiencing which challenges. And we have partnered up with some of the tertiary institutions where we do speak to them on a daily basis to say, look, we've got a situation of this learner. This is their academic level. These are the interests. How best can we assist? And from both sides, we are able to discuss. Sometimes we do find solutions for learners. Sometimes we are limited. But I believe, because this is a journey for us, when we get to a point where we have now formal partnership with government, that will then make it possible for us to be enrooted in all these institutions. Then it's easier for us to have not a perfect, but a direct path for a learner to say, looking at your capabilities, looking at your interest, these are the two institutions that we highly recommend you to go through in order to develop your career skills.
Okay. So out of 1,700 potential careers, what's one of the more unique or interesting careers that you've placed a student in? Something that's atypical.
What we've been doing, I think, for the past year or nearly 2 years, is we started combining the passion, because we actually discussed that look, sometimes you've got a situation where a learner is confused between I want to do accounting and I want to be a lawyer, then we're like, okay, but why not combine the interest? Because as I've said, I wanted to be an architect. Today I'm a system architect. I create, so why not direct these learners into career paths that would address those two? And we now tell them that, look, if you want to be an go into an accounting and maybe a lawyer, take law, specialize in taxation. So that way, that career path addresses two of your passion. So those are the kind of careers we are trying to introduce to learners. Obviously, most of the careers that are very dynamic and flexible, you find them in your obviously tech space, because they're always moving, they're always transforming. When a learner wants to go into marketing, we always advise, look at digital marketing, because that's where things are going. Try infuse the two elements.
In the context of South Africa, we've obviously got significant employment challenges to overcome. Coronavirus has only exacerbated these sort of negative circumstances that we find ourselves in. What is your forecast or outlook for the next couple of years, and how do you think South Africa is going to get to a point where we do start reducing the unemployment rate and, place students as well, place workers in a work environment where they're able to obviously look after themselves and after their families? And, this is obviously a big problem. And how do you see that playing out over the next couple of years?
We are going to experience a shock based on what I'm assuming and I'm thinking, because we really need to understand what this pandemic has brought in the education space and the effects thereafter. I mean, currently we're sitting at nearly 50% of youth unemployment. Now let's take into consideration the pandemic. A lot of retrenchment has happened in companies. I'm assuming we're going to experience the biggest failure rate in matric, even though no one is covering it. But there are signs. There's a lot of paper leakage because a lot of learners did not have access to education. Okay, some fortunate learners, they could study from home, looking at the lockdown period. Some of them, there's an increase in pregnancy in high school. I mean, learners didn't do anything, So just the effect of what just happened this year, we're going to now see more learners that are not skilled. They don't have they can't access any educational opportunity to develop their skills. Companies are trying to recover from the pandemic. So for them to take on new employees, never mind unskilled employees, it's going to be difficult. So those are the challenges we can go on and on, but those are the least one can state. And when you think of those challenges, you can just imagine the impact it will have in the next couple of years. But in all that, we are working with Lephalale municipality, where we have introduced our new system. It's a youth portal. So with that, what we are trying to achieve is to centralize the job opportunities, because each and every company needs to say who's the best person I can employ? Who's the best person I can invest in terms of skills development? So that is challenges companies are experiencing. We always speak about high unemployment rate, but there are certain careers which companies can't fill because there's no right people to fill those jobs, So we just trying to then now centralize the job opportunities. I believe that if this is a mindset that can be adopted, then what we are doing is we are well managing the opportunities that are there. Because in some situation, you've got certain job opportunities which are linked to soft skills. You take your time as a company to employ this specific person. After 3 months, they leave for another opportunity. So it's not well managed because as a company, you are losing out. And the system, that's what it's coming to trying to address, to say, as a company, you look at your internal affairs and say, look, I'm looking for 5 people, but you then become specific. These are the 5 people that I'm willing to look for. Then because we've got a database of all the youth in Lephalale, then we are able to then direct the relevant person to those companies. So the best thing we can do as South Africa is manage the opportunities that are there. Then once we can do that well, then we can now start looking at now the next step. How do we then create new opportunities? How do we then start working towards fighting against unemployment? But with the current approach, recently the president has spoken about creating new job opportunities. But because of not well managing those opportunities, they're going to come in and service for a couple of months as a political move. But it's something that's going to happen for a few months, a year. Then after that, when you come back and say, let's look at the impact, how many of the job creation you have created, how many of them are sustainable, then you realize that it was not sustainable because of lack of management.
Yes. So what can parents do? During this time, we obviously have many families spread across the country. We've got kids in private schools, public schools, fully government funded schools. But obviously, parents are sitting in a position where they have to try to continue to work, as well as keep their children stimulated and educated during a time where we were under severe lockdown measures. That said, what can parents do to generate an interest in career understanding and career planning at a young age?
I think this is the time where parents actually have to be hands-on. It's no more a matter of is it an option or what. Parents need to educate themselves because we've got parents that are also not educated in terms of careers. So they need to educate themselves with an open mind because now things are going digital. We would have never imagined there's a social media manager. You tell your parents that that's what I want to be. They're just going to flip because they are thinking of your traditional, careers. So it's about time parents also show interest in what's happening out there in terms of educating themselves in careers. And once they do that, it easily wraps off your kids, I believe, because if my parents are as much concerned as I am, automatically I am going to be, I'm going to drift to that, then then it's easy for parents to come in and suggest certain things and even listen, because a kid can come with certain suggestions. A parent can listen, do further research, and would be then able to guide learners in that respect.
So what do you believe about the education system, either something that is being done or something that isn't being done, that most people may disagree with? So for example, some people believe that the education system is perfect as it is. Naturally, many people would disagree with that. Some people believe that marks and aggregates should be removed from the education system. So is there anything that you uniquely believe about the current education system?
I think I would fall in the category of people that don't believe in the current educational system, because simply, fine, some people can justify it working and some people might. I mean, taking my own references, I remember in grade 12, at that time, you would pass with an S, and in the current system, it will be a diploma pass, right? So for the same student that got a diploma, then I went to study further, to study at a level of an honors, and I did very well. So if I had continued with the same mindset that I had in high school, I would always think that I'm an underachiever because the marks suggested that. But if you take my matric marks and my honors marks, you don't understand, is this the same person? So that taught me a very great lesson, life lesson, to say that sometimes it's not that learners are underachievers or not. It's just at that point, what state of mind are they in, and I use myself as a reference. So I believe that when we look at marks, we look at the current system, it's not doing justice in learners. I would say, but what is the aspect of us actually evaluating learners on their creative level? I mean, when you look at other overseas countries, what they're doing, they're drifting away from evaluating learners in that manner. If you get a 50, you are a standard learner. If you get 90, then you are an achiever. But looking at more of creativity, how do we stimulate the learner's mind to be creative? Because when you are creative, you can now, when we speak about the 4IR, we're speaking about minds that are able to bring solutions that can solve certain challenges we are facing with. And that's what we need. That we need to encourage critical thinkers. Can our learners solve everyday problems that we're faced with? And this is not referring to a math equation. If they don't solve that, it means they can't solve life problems, which is not true. So I feel there's the shortage in our current education system is that, which I don't think is doing justice to our learners.
Yeah, that's a brilliant insight. Couldn't agree more. Thank you so much for your time. I've really enjoyed this conversation, and it's incredibly inspiring to see people like yourself making such a wide impact, across both the country and across many young South Africans who desperately need it in a time like this. So, I tip my hat to you, and if ever there's anything that we can do to contribute to your foundation, please let us know.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I think this is a great platform because it gave me an opportunity to just share what we do, because this is what we are passionate about. So such platforms are good for us.
No, absolutely. I think before we end off, if there's anybody interested in connecting with you or connecting with your foundation or business, maybe you can just let people know where they can find you.
So we on all the platform, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, as PS Connect. Then also the same platforms as PS Foundation and PC. So they can easily connect with us on those platforms, and we'll be able to engage them. Then currently, because of the whole COVID thing, we haven't fully went back to the office. So we just decided to adopt a new approach of working remotely. So we're trying that out, but we should be going back in Jan, hopefully, if all these cases starts coming down.
The Future Minds podcast is brought to you by SmartTech. SmartTech is an award-winning, intelligent, online mathematics and coding program for kids aged 4 to 14. Powered by sophisticated, adaptive AI, SmartTech teaches kids math and coding from the comfort of home in as little as 15 minutes per day. For more information, visit smarttech.com or download the app on tablet or iPad today.